Hello again, ladies and gents, and welcome back to your favourite podcast, the AJR Show. Today, we are super lucky to be joined from right on the other side of the planet from Chantelle Baker from Christchurch in New Zealand, who is a reporter and broadcaster and has been doing emphatic work on the ground over there, reporting on what's actually going down under. I was really excited to get Chantelle on the show because I've had lots of guests from Australia on, but obviously showing the light on what's actually happening down in NZ is really important because it's not what you're seeing on the news. Obviously, the news, what they have over there is showing a complete fallacy of actually what's really going on. There's lots and lots of fake news. Is one of the worst places for it. So having someone like Chantelle on the ground for the Kiwi population is really, really important to get the actual real evidence out there and, the real ongoing. So welcome to the show, Chantelle. Absolute pleasure to have you.
Well, thanks, AJ. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's cast ourselves back then, like a couple of years, shall we? And obviously your journey and all this, because I was pretty much in a similar position. I had my podcast and I was interviewing, like high performance guests and talking about their, extraordinary people doing extraordinary things. And all of a sudden this kind of kicked off, different places around the world. And then I soon realized that something wasn't right. And people were then speaking up all over the place in different areas. So I started investigating myself and then started interviewing people on the podcast. And it kind of went from there, really kind of snowballed to where we are now. So, I mean, your journey, you've been doing a lot of journalism, reporting and stuff like that. Was it kind of similar sort of concept?
Yeah, really, really similar. But my journey started even a shorter time period ago. So I only started this maybe 5 or 6 months ago, probably maybe about 6 months ago. So it's been just built, kind of blown up really, really quick for me, for New Zealand size anyway, which is really exciting. But at the same time, it happened because my dad used to be in politics, or he ran for a political party. It was a minor party. So he was never actually running a sitting politician. But because of that, he ran on the conservative side. Because of that, I saw a lot of the media that he would film and that he would do and the questions they'd ask him and then what they would actually play on TV. So it started to make me quite aware of the corruption within the media industry. So then when it came to COVID, it took a wee while. It probably took me about maybe 4 or 5 months from the very outset or maybe it wasn't that long. Maybe it was only about 4 weeks because I was like, right, either this is a really bad pandemic and lots of people are going to die. So I went and brought my 1 litre hand sanitizers. I had my mask. I even had this little zip up hazmat suit because I thought just in case it's actually a pandemic, at least I'm safe. And then I realized pretty soon, you could see the data coming out and I was like, okay, this is actually not at all what they've pitched it to us. So then I just started looking a lot more at the reporting coming out and the data from Israel, the data from you guys in the UK, and just started unpacking this and then looked further into social credit and everything like that. And that's where it kind of snowballed. And I made my first video with my dad on his page at the time, just as we Facebook page. And then from there, I just remember sitting there with tears streaming down my face after we posted it, thinking, I'm done. There goes all my friends. I'll probably lose my job. The amount of pressure for speaking out publicly in New Zealand is huge. And there's been a little bit of kickback, but it hasn't been anywhere near as bad as I expected. And the positive reaction has been really, really large because nobody here in New Zealand really does it. There's a few others, but not very many.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. I mean, I'm sure your dad's very, very proud. And, there's been that short period of time, you've got to where you have now. And, the level of reporting's been fantastic. I've seen loads of your videos. It's been great because I've been wanting to obviously keep up through my own personal interest of what's going on over there, having, so many Kiwi friends myself. You say last 5-6 months. So from what I understand here in the UK and what we've been told about New Zealand and what we were showing over periods of time is that New Zealand was probably in a good place. It wasn't so communist or gone that way, the way it's gone. Nothing like it. It was kind of just kind of relaxed. And then all of a sudden it just went whoosh with Australia, literally next thing you need to get jabbed. Now you need to be double jabbed. Now you need to be boosted. Now there's passports everywhere. You can't go into stores. You can't do this. You can't do that. And it's really elevated at a rapid rate of knots, hasn't it? And such a short, so much so it's literally you feel like you've been punched in the face and you don't know if this is real.
honestly, I feel like I just got choked out in the UFC. Like, it feels like it's been 3 seconds and I'm out cold. Like the last 2-3 months is when they really brought in like I think it's been about 3 months now, 4 months. I feel like time just gets absorbed into nothing. But they brought in the vaccine passports, and from there, everything is just shot off. So now they're looking at making it mandatory for even the wee kids. So they said that they were never going to, but then a lot of the legislation that we're seeing being brought out is working towards mandatory mandatory for your first booster, and then mandatory for the children as well, which is just, I mean, it's horrific. Like at the moment, little 12-year-olds, if they want to go on a paddleboard out in like Lake Wanaka, which is a beautiful lake down south, they've got to have a vaccine passport to be on the middle of a lake alone when they're 12. I mean, the level of brainwashing, though, is probably the most concerning, because our government does have control over the media here. As much as they try to say that they don't, it's the same narrative because it's all based on funding. So they've got like a public interest fund, which helps them. And so that's where the propaganda has just really been able to blow up. And it's very, very, very hard to get an alternate opinion out there.
Yeah, and it's a very similar situation here, and has been for years. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's, big investors and funders of the BBC and the Imperial College, and funny enough, they're the ones that have been spouting out the majority of the certain narratives, as the Imperial College have been doing particular studies and producing particular findings. But we all know that you look after the hand that feeds you, don't you? And it's always been the case. And it was the narrative in the wars, like you control the media, you control the world. And the Rothschilds himself even said it. The people at the very sort of like right near the top of this pyramid we find ourselves at the bottom of. It is very, very alarming. And I just, the fact that 12-year-old kids have been mandated to have a vaccine passport to go to a lake outside just goes to show you how ridiculous this is, especially in, high summer times, which you guys experience there, with temperatures that we know that the said disease wouldn't even survive in. Just goes to show you how ridiculous this is. I find it
quite traumatic watching like little old people walk down the road with their grocery bags with their mask on. It makes me want to cry. I'm just like, why are you doing this to yourselves? And then it makes you angry because you're like, why have the media put this fear in people where they think that that's necessary? Yeah,
and it's the same here, and that's been one of my biggest bugbears is seeing our amazing elderly, many whom probably served this country, collectively built this country up, and your country, all countries around the world, to what they are now, paid their taxes all their life, and then they've been put into this horrendous state of fear, where they think like there's a plague going around somewhere, and they're almost like waiting to see if people start dropping dead still nearly 2 years later. It's been my biggest grievance, I think, throughout this whole thing, and obviously alongside now the pressure that's being put on children themselves, but they know that kids buckle under peer pressure as well. So my kids have had it in their school where kids have joked and called them like anti-vaxxers now because they're not having it, but they just brush it off. They're strong kids, but like other kids don't, and they go home and say, yeah, I want it, and they're not actually doing it for them. They're doing it because their friends are having it. And these psychology companies that work alongside the government know all this, because they work off of external validation, don't they, on their phones and stuff like that. So it's all about feeling good and not upsetting people. And like you said, the parents are the same.
Yeah. The level of coercion here was scary for kids. Like they were giving them out $100 like vouchers for the supermarket. They were giving them out cash. So some kids would go get the jab and then run back around and get it again to get more cash, because they would do it in low decile areas. They wouldn't do it in the rich areas. They just do it in the low decile areas. Like it's so wrong. Then we had big buses pulling up with KFC for kids, so that whichever ones went and got it, because they don't need their parents' permission here. They put through legislation, so they don't need it from 12 to 18. So you've got little 12-year-olds that are getting offered KFC just outside their school if they hopped on the bus. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what kind of, it's so bad. It's so bad. And people weren't even standing up saying, that's a bit concerning. People were silent about it. And I'm going, how can you sit there and watch kids try to make a huge medical decision, not having informed consent, and then pretending like this is an okay thing as a society to accept? Yeah. It's horrendous, isn't it? We've got this thing here at the moment that's they keep trying to fight because
they released the yellow card scheme data, which is like the reporting system, and it's only what's reported. So there's obviously, for a fact there's way more deaths as a result of this, within 2-3 week period. Once things are, because everyone's body is different, isn't it? People having like heart attacks 3 weeks later, but it's not being linked. Someone who's like perfectly fit and healthy, so they're being put down as heart attack or being put down as COVID. But what they're doing here is they won't produce the ONS, the Office of National Statistics. They won't produce the data for the kids that have died.
Oh,
why?
Yeah,
like, do you know what I mean? Like, why not? Say someone's put in a freedom of information request, and a judge ruled that they don't have to produce it. So they produce everything for everything else, but they won't produce the data on the kids that died. But I mean, going off my DMs and the reports that all the other guys have had in, we know it's in the triple figures, which is disgusting, considering that we've just had release of the official figures from 2-year period of people that have died solely of COVID, no comorbidities and stuff like that. And I believe there was like one male between 15 and 19, or 12 and 15, who died in 2 years. Yet we're in triple figures of children that have died from vaccines. And you're talking hundreds that have got myocarditis and stuff like that, and other injuries. Is it something that you've seen now that they're really pushing this on the children in New Zealand? Reports coming out of like injuries and deaths?
Yeah, absolutely. There has been for the 12 to 18-year-old group. I haven't seen them come through yet for the little kids, but it could just be because a lot of people here are really holding off on the 5 to 11s. A lot of people are just waiting on that. So it could just be a lack of data. But at the same time, all of the VIAs and the CALM reporting goes through MedSafe, which is government owned, and so it's really well government managed. So it's really, really difficult to even get a death accepted as being related to the vaccine. At this stage, they're saying there's only been 2, but then there's a private monitoring system that's up to, I think it's around 600. So they've only admitted to 2, but I think the issue is that a lot of people aren't pushing to have the coroner's reports done, and the coroners are acting in an illegal way by, when the families are grieving, they ask for a coroner's report and they start telling them, oh, well, we're going to have to cut out this part of their body, and then we'll be opening up this part of their body, and they go into great detail about it. And so the people just freak out, understandably, as you would. And then they say no. And so then it's really, really hard to try and see and get an accurate gauge of what's actually going on. But we do know that the CVTAG, which is your vaccine advisory group, your technical advisory group, back in July, maybe it was June, I think it was actually June the 13th, they said that you should only have, if there's anyone under the age of 29, only 1 dose for anyone under the age of 29. And then miraculously, a week later, they came back saying, oh, no, we'll just go with what MedSafe have approved and run with both of them for all ages. But no new data happened in that week. The only difference is they thought that it would create like social caution around taking the vaccine if they were told to only take 1 dose. So it's just all of that. It's just very manipulative, and none of that is proper informed consent, which is what it always should have been from the start. It's just such a shame that so many medical professionals could sit there just watching this happen and see the data and just not speak up.
It's horrendous. And I mean, the fact that all these countries around the world are absolutely destroying all the ethics of all these conventions out there, the Nuremberg Code. It's almost as if like you've got the Declaration of Human Rights in one hand, and the Nuremberg Code in the other, and just throw them on the floor and just chucked a match on them and just watched it burn. That is literally what it's doing. I just find it bizarre how kids being offered KFC on a bus to get a jab. Like, where's the ethics and morals in that? And it doesn't matter what side of the fence you sit on. Like, if you cannot see any wrong in that, you need to have a serious word with yourself. That's stuff like we've never seen in our lifetime.
Yeah, it's like the creepy Pied Piper, isn't it? Because they play music. Yeah. They play music from the buses to try and get people to come out of their houses and come down and get
like an ice cream truck.
What is it? Like the world's worst ice cream truck. Yeah. But then there's no details about any of the reactions that you could have before you go and get your jab. They don't tell you to sign any waivers, nothing. So you just roll on up, they put it in your body, you go. And like people, they had like drive-throughs where you just drive through and, absolutely fine. But there was nothing to do with actually telling people, hey, these are some of the side effects. And they knew back then with that same advisory group, they talked about the risk of myocarditis and particularly young males being really high. So they knew back then, but then our health advisor didn't put out a letter to the hospitals until December. So they had the rollout that whole time and they didn't tell anybody about the information that they had from the beginning.
Wow.
And now we've had multiple deaths that have been attributed to myocarditis.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Obviously, there's a really, really prevalent thing here. But unfortunately, I know 11 males in the UK that have had heart attacks, myocarditis. 3 of them are in the military as well, and all under 40. Obviously, we've got this major issue now worldwide with like athletes collapsing. People say like, oh, it was happening before like the vaccines come out. Well, you just got to plot it on an actual graph. Just plot it on a graph yourself. It's not hard. And it just go, this person had this there. Look at all the reports and see how many's happened in the last 12 months. And you'll see it just goes whoosh like that, like hundreds of percent higher. So ask yourself, what's the constant here? What's been introduced that's like causing this? I
mean, 3 of them collapsed at the Australian Open.
Yeah, when's that ever
3
happened?
of them holding their heart. I'm like, and people are mad at Novak for not wanting it. And you're like, looking at these people collapsing on the court, but you're like, what?
Yeah, I couldn't believe the outrage from the Australian people against Novak, to be honest. And this is not me siding with him, because having lived there, and people are quite patriotic and stuff. It's great, but if it was the other way around, and there was an Australian player playing in like the Serbian Open, and he was treated like that, the Australian people would go mental, wouldn't they?
Well, he had actually done everything right, and the judge ruled in his favour, and Australia decided to deport him. But I think be very careful of thinking that people were really in favour about this, because that's not necessarily true. Like there's thousands and thousands and thousands that I saw, because I used to live in Melbourne, heaps of people saying how ridiculous it was, saying how stupid it was. He'd already had negative tests. He was absolutely fine. It was so unnecessary.
It's just media. Yeah, so you've got like the Australian media plus the American media, British media, and everything like all working in tandem, like pushing this one side of the story, haven't you? Which then goes out to your sort of alternative media groups that are kind of like pro-narrative and that as well, which flood the internet, sport Bibles, all these kind of stuff that you see like on Facebooks and social media. So yeah, it's kind of plainly obvious. Your lovely Prime Minister.
Old Cindy.
Juicy. She's got a way with words, hasn't she? And the way she portrays herself on camera, literally, I don't think I've ever seen a more westernized, authoritarian prime minister or president. She is something else.
So well coached.
Yeah.
She's got, I think, 72 PR people. It comes at a cost of millions and millions and millions and millions, and everything she says is meticulously coached. But the sad part is that to most people, they wouldn't even understand that. Like, it's not until you've worked in publicity or marketing that you're like, wow, they've done a great job, because it's so perfect. Like, every single word is designed to draw out a certain emotion or designed to take you on a certain journey with her. Every single part of it, but it's not like talking to a genuine person, and everything is kind of robotic and precise, and it's scary to watch. But there have been cracks in that lately. I'm sure you guys, well, maybe you would have seen that video where a reporter said to her, well, you're kind of creating 2 classes of people. I'm sure you don't see it like that, but and she goes, yep, that's exactly what it is. But that's a big crack for her, and that blew up everywhere. But the way she reacted to his question, there is a big crack, because typically she would never, ever, ever, ever say anything to remotely play on a fine line, no matter where she was. It was always very direct. And so that, for me, you started to see a few cracks come along with that in a few other press conferences. Yeah. But then she's nearly back on track now. So who knows what was happening for her.
But I think a lot of these, a lot of the similar countries, you tend to see a lot of the story follows the same kind of pattern across all the different countries in a similar way. They all start tuning their attention slightly to sort of like certain things. So by saying things like that, you could very well want to create a 2-tier society. as well as like Australia, all the different premiers in Australia try to do, you know, almost follow suit and have them kind of balance against each other. It's funny how like whenever they have these big get-togethers, they sit suddenly the things start kind of change straight afterwards, like on all these different countries, like they did through Europe after the COP26. It's almost like they get together to kind of regroup their plans and then go again. Nothing to do with climate change. You know, leave that to Leonardo Dicaprio here.
Yeah, I found that really interesting with Leo, how he didn't realize the irony of his Don't Look Up movie.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, he really is a little bit more simple than I may have originally thought.
What I liked the other day is he put this big thing out about like 9 days, was it 9 years? So talking about like a critical point we've got for climate change and that. But yet to get to where he went to, he had to get a chopper from his yacht to an airport and then fly privately to the place. And I'm just like, you know, there you go, well done.
The perception is just so out of whack, isn't it?
yeah. But it was great. You can see it, like, I was just reading the comments from everybody, just like on the pages, and that everyone's saying the same thing, like, yeah, but you won't complain on your private jet on the way there and stuff like that. So, you know, people aren't stupid, which is good. So as a so if I, well, I'll probably struggle to get into New Zealand, but like, let's just say, you know, they said like, oh, AJ Roberts, we love your podcast, like we want to invite you over. Obviously, as a what would I be restricted by as soon as I got there? Like, what would be my biggest hurdles?
Well, if you're not double G'd, you can't even get back into the country. So even if you're a citizen, you can't get in. So that would be step number one. Then once you land, you've got 14 days isolation. So that's in a managed isolation facility. And some of them are pretty horrific. Like some of them would have a square probably about this for exercising in. You know, like it's not great. And they've restricted it. So a couple of places restricted it to only 2 half-hour activity sessions per week. So it's not like you're just out in a week.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. The mental health toll of that is horrendous. Then once you get here, we're now in what they call the traffic light system. I don't know if you guys
saw that. Yeah. Good
old traffic lights. So they've just moved it to red because we have 9 cases in the community. Nationwide, 9.
9 cases.
Yep.
And obviously cases, we know cases don't mean infections.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So 9 cases, the whole country's in red. And that means that if you're not jibby jabs, you basically can't go out to any restaurant, you can't go out to a bar, you can't do anything like that. You can't do most activities, most sports. You can't hold church services. I think it is more than 25 people, or maybe it's not even at all, because I mean, we have ours locally, so I wouldn't even know anymore. But yeah, it's just really, really sad to see, particularly for the kids, because now they can't even go to their school sports. You know, like they can't go and play touch rugby or anything like that. And that's the whole country for an indefinite amount of time. So before that, we were in orange with 0 cases, 0 community cases nationwide, and we were in orange. So you still needed your vaccine passports. Like I can't go and buy a latte without a vaccine passport in orange or red.
Wow.
So I can't go to any cafe, nothing. So they say takeaway, but even then, like say a cafe had a chair outside the cafe, then that would be classified as needing a vaccine passport for anyone to sit on that chair. It's insane. But lots of businesses aren't doing it. But the ones that have stood up and tried to do common law and that type of thing to get around it, and based on the whole like sovereign living being type of law. I don't know if you guys know, but like do much of that.
Yeah,
but people tried that. But yeah, it's just had businesses shut down. So the reaction's been really swift and really awful. But I mean, well, what do you do? And this is the problem. And Kiwis still aren't awake to it. I mean, I've got members of my own family happily using their wee passes, beep, 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 everywhere they go. And I'm just, you know, and they said, oh, I'm sorry you can't come with us. And I'm like, well, you're not that sorry, or else you wouldn't use it. So I refuse to use any system like that at any point ever, because regardless of your back status, it's wrong.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's incredibly wrong, because but people might think like, oh, we're doing the right thing, and they're thinking very much in the present, but they have no idea what this is just a Trojan horse for, which is obviously the full digital ID, social credit systems, which has been enforced in China for quite some time and is absolutely horrific. You know, you think you're being rewarded for having a shot in the arm and then using your phone to get in somewhere. Wait till like this thing kicks in, which you've conformed to, not you, but the public have conformed to this whole time, and it's because of them. Like, this is where this is going to turn around and like bite them in the ass, because they're going to soon realize it's because of all that conformity is why we are where we are.
Yeah,
it's nothing to do with people. Yeah, and there's nothing to do with people wanting to express and be within their own medical autonomy for their own body, and not wanting to have something which the data clearly shows can cause serious harm and death. They're doing the right thing by them and their family, especially parents. And I must add that people think, oh, you're selfish, you're selfish. That no, mate, I've got kids I don't want to leave on their own, and that is the genuine risk. Not just now, but 8, 9, 10 months time, because we're seeing a massive increase in autoimmune diseases and cancers are shot through the roof. Like, not just here, everywhere. A lot of countries are keeping it really, like, they're trying to keep it under the wraps, but like in America and here they can't, because we've got doctors and nurses, new ones coming out every single week speaking out about it.
Oh wow, they are.
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing, because here none of them want to, but the ones that we have had come out, they've all had their medical licenses stripped.
They're not doing that here. They haven't done that. That's the thing. So I know in Australia and at your place, they're like, literally, they've all been threatened, haven't they, with their medical license if they say anything negative about the vaccine.
I mean, most of them have had it stripped already. Like, it's so wrong. And we've had the Doctor of the Year had his medical license taken off him. Doctor of the Year. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. And the people that look at that and go, he was Doctor of the Year. He managed to find a cancer in a lady that no one else could see. He found that in her, and now he's saying, hey, maybe hold off and wait for the long-term data, and he's not allowed to be a doctor anymore. And he's nearly at a retirement age, and you're going, why? Like, people are it's just the trust that they have in these paid individuals who are profiting off this blows my mind. And I genuinely thought that people would know better. Even just as basic business principle and even basic journalism, they say follow the money. Who's getting paid the most for this, and then decide if it's something you want to be involved in or not, but actually know who's pulling the strings.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been the clear and obvious statement all along is follow the money, and that's what people don't do. They can't be bothered, but argue with the people that have followed the money, which I find quite amusing. But so with the children, like at school and stuff like that, for the young kids, like, are they having to wear like masks in school and distance and everything else like that?
Well, they've just brought in the mask restrictions, like brought them back in really, really heavily because of these 9 community cases. So now you're going to have wee 5-year-olds at school having to wear masks.
Even though there's I think it's 67 peer-reviewed, worldwide papers that completely debunk them, because, the nanograms of the actual, the nanograms of the vaccine clearly, the nanograms of the actual airborne virus are so small, miles smaller than any surgical mask, cloth mask. A good analogy I've heard is like literally holding a handful of sand and throwing it at chain link fence. Like, that's as good as they get. And we're sticking on these poor kids who need facial expression and all this kind of stuff to develop themselves. And geez, like, putting a mask on a kid in the middle of the summer, like, what is going on?
Can we talk about what Britain does with masks? I know we talked about this earlier before, but for the people that follow me that will see this, I think it's really important that they realise that what the British do when they follow, like, if they follow the mask mandate or not, because pretty much everyone in New Zealand does, and it is so difficult to find people that don't wear them. Yeah,
so I've never worn one, and I knew that it was bullshit like ages ago. They brought out a thing that you can self-declarate that you're exempt. So this is how stupid it is. You can literally go onto the government website, download a little picture to put on your phone that says, I am exempt from wearing a mask. You don't have to fill a form out or anything. You just literally download it onto your phone. And then someone says to you, if they say to you, oh, sorry, have you got a mask? And I say, oh, I'm exempt. Oh, okay then. So like this downloaded PDF means everything. And nothing. But I think the general consensus is like there's still a lot of people who wear them. I think a lot more so for their own comfort. They feel like they're protecting others. And B, because like they don't want to be confronted. They fear that someone might look at them and judge them, because I think that's one of the biggest things. But that's just a general self-conscious, self-confidence, self-esteem thing that's obviously very low in a lot of Western countries, as it is, and we know why. Again, they know this. So a lot of people do that because they're worried about being judged. Whereas, if you're a fairly confident person, and to be up this Thursday, I think it is, they're just like that. They're taking all mask mandates away. They're taking all this stuff away because of ongoing investigations and other things. So just goes to show you how bullshit it is, because they can literally just drop it, on a certain date, because after Thursday, the virus is going to leave here and head over to New Zealand and cause you more aggro. It's just absolutely mental. But even at the height, I mean, they were introduced 2020, like at the height of summer, like on public transport and stuff like that, when there was like hardly any cases. So it just didn't even make sense to anyone. And I always refer back to this, I think it was like March, April time in 2020. I seen this guy in a shop wearing a mask, right? It was the only person, because obviously he'd been watching the news and they were talking about last year this like Wuhan virus and all this kind of stuff, and it was coming over to UK. So it was just someone taking precaution. And these two guys walked past him, and they're just like, "Well, I'm a dickhead," and like this guy with the mask was like, "You what?" And it was right in front of me. I ended up like breaking up this little fight. And I was like, "This is pathetic." And then literally 2 months later, everyone's wearing masks, and then having a go at people for not wearing them. You know what I mean? It's just like literally flips like that. So it's quite amusing. But even when they tried to bring this Plan B recently over here, and it's clearly like, again, not where it's backfired on them. And they said about wearing masks in shops now, but even then, like I wasn't. So many people I know don't, and I don't even think I've been challenged once. So even with them in, people aren't like really challenging them. I think they're being told not to challenge people, because at the end of the day, a lot of these retail places and hospitality and stuff like that, they're on basic wage. A lot of these people, they're not paid to sort of like stand there and argue with people over a mask, which is completely, the right thing to do. So yeah, it's kind of like wearing thin now, the whole mask thing of it. People have seen right through it. They try to bring it back in for kids at school. Most parents are like, "My kid ain't wearing a mask." And that the school was like, okay. They didn't enforce it. Whereas I know a lot of countries, it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just, and I don't understand why the schools would think that would be a healthy thing for a child either. Like if you look statistically, children have a near zero chance of getting sick and dying from this. So the amount of social harm would be so much greater, and even just to developing
100%.
lungs and everything like that as well. And the manufacturers don't say to wear them very long. And they actually say, like the N95s in particular, they say you're actually you're meant to go through a training regimen to understand how to use them properly and to take care of them and everything like that. And yet we've just trotted them out to the whole country. What, for people that don't understand, like what is Plan B over there?
So Plan B was pretty much the introduction of under the radar vaccine passports. It was the need to use them, but you could also have a negative lateral flow test as well to prove that you weren't sick, even though the test is shit. But like to get into things like nightclubs and big sporting arenas and stuff like that. So yeah, that's all it really was. But then the reintroduction of like masks in shops and busy sort of retail places and public transport and all this kind of stuff. Again, it's like they do everything very underhanded here in the UK, because it's almost like they have to try and test the public and the public opinion, because of I think just because of the nature of the people here. You've got almost 70 million people on quite a small island. So if you upset too much of a majority, it can really backfire on you, I think.
Do you reckon that the British are just a bit more scrappy as well?
Yeah.
Like you guys just actually like to have a bit more of a fight, a riot, a protest, whereas Kiwis are kind of like, we'll just, sit back and see what happens.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as we were talking about before we went on live, that we've got such a history of like battles won and lost, and so much like scrapping, basically, like year after year, there's always some kind of scrap. you know, even the way British are, you know, on in the nightlife situation, you know, people don't go out and have a pint. You know, British people go out and get absolutely smashed and then just scrap with each other.
Yeah.
You know, that's just gone on for as long as I've been alive, you know, and longer. So yeah, there's I think there's just that kind of mentality in people, and we've got a lot of fiery Eastern Europeans that live here as well. That, you know, there's this, you know, quite a large population of immigration here as well, and a lot of them Eastern Europeans, like they don't just stand there and bend over. You know, they stand up and like want to scrap as well, because a lot of them come from like quite sort of previous communist countries and stuff like that. So yeah, we've got like a fairly good mix.
I think it's a lot of the people that understand communism, like you said, have been through it. Like a lot of the people that are standing up here are the ones that understand communism. If they don't understand communism, they kind of just sit there and like, oh, you know, things will work out. And the people who do understand communism and I've either seen it before or studied it, they're all the ones that are going, oh, no, this is really, really dangerous. Like, do not go down this path. But how do you teach history to people who don't even want to open their eyes to a little bit of it? You know, this is the challenge that we face. And particularly when you've got a population that are so easily controlled by the narrative. And it really surprises me, because like what was shown of Britain is that everyone is so compliant, you know, everyone's super compliant and there's people dying everywhere and it's just horrific. Like that's what we're showing in New Zealand. Like it's like, oh, well, you know, the UK is doing just really terribly and they're really struggling and they're opening up restrictions, but oh, you know, there's people dying left, right and centre. So it's very easy, I think, to manipulate people when we're like on 40 deaths or whatever. But again, I think it's also harder to lie here because we're such a small population and everyone knows everyone. Like honestly, hands down, like everyone knows someone who knows the exact person that's on the TV. So it's harder for them to lie and say, oh yeah, this person died of COVID and that person and this person, because everyone's like, well, where did it come from and who gave it to them? And it's very easy to track. So I guess there's a layer of protection for us in the fact that it's harder for them to lie, whereas it's a lot easier for them to lie with statistics, I would say, in the UK and the USA.
Yeah, I mean, here at the minute we've got a pandemic of its own involving lying from the government, because obviously all this stuff's coming up about Christmas parties, Boris' birthday, like, you know, all this stuff that just miraculously seems to have just come out of some locked away vault for a rainy day. But all it involves is just constant lies, corruption, manipulation from Boris and his cabinet, you know, all the people around him, chief medical officers, all the rest of it. So we're seeing that end of it, you know. So the people are very, very quickly falling out of love with anything to do with the government, because it's just, they can't trust them, you know. And once you lose that trust, it's hard to get back, regardless who's in the seat. So again, it's just another puppet. And, you know, once you really understand what's going on here in the UK, you can clearly see that this current government isn't running the country. It's a shadow government. It's people like your big Gates's Foundation, your Soros, all these people, you know, right at the top of the tree. These people are just spokespeople that do as they're told, you know, and then get a photo with the boss when he turns up for a random dinner in London. But that's pretty much what's happening here. So I get what you're saying about it is harder to lie to people and manipulate the data and stuff like that. But I can tell you now, I can tell the people of, you know, New Zealand, people aren't dropping dead left, right, and centre whatsoever. The ones that are dying and being labelled as COVID deaths are being topped off basically with midazolam and with remdesivir, which is obviously being used extensively across the United States, as ordered by Anthony Fauci. I won't call him a doctor because I don't believe he is. It doesn't even warrant a title. Lizard. And he that's obviously made its way over to UK, because obviously it'd be a good thing for you to investigate yourself the use of it over in New Zealand, and how, like, obviously these healthcare establishments are actually using it and getting a lot of commission for using it, because it gives people acute kidney failure, because they say it's an antiviral. 54% of the people that used it in the trials during the Ebola campaign died with it by day 5. So just goes to show you how deadly this is. But they're actively giving it to people in hospitals here in the UK once they come through the doors with suggested COVID symptoms. and then they end up on a ventilator, and then a statistic, and it's such a stark, dangerous thing that's going on. But it's happening in a lot of countries around the world now. There's a lot of other countries who have seen podcasts and seen people online, and are now feeding back that information that's happening there, like places like Austria and Germany and France and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting to see if they're using it in places like New Zealand and Australia as well.
Yeah, I might go and look into that, because it's particularly for the aged care population, isn't it? And our original outbreak was in the aged care facility.
It's the same everywhere. So we had a thing here. This is part of this criminal investigation. We had thousands of elderly killed with midazolam in the care homes, and they were all labelled COVID. And that number was used right at the start of the pandemic to scare the population into thinking there's this massive outbreak, and that you need to run and hide behind your sofa, and people in your family are going to die and all this kind of stuff. And in reality, that's actually what happened. They were starved, dehydrated, and then given midazolam and died when they were nowhere near end of life. So, and that was happening on a mass scale, and they were all labelled with a DNR, a do not resuscitate. So that's not just happening; it's happening in loads of countries around the world. They're now finding this because something like 80% of the deaths that occurred have been in the care homes. Yeah, I think our care home population makes up like 0.6 of the population. Wow. So, when you actually look at those stats and figures, you can't not ask yourself, like, shit, what is going on here?
So the case that you guys are bringing out, and I know you've been involved in that a lot. I mean, people from New Zealand would love to know about that court case. I know there's a few people, I think, that are trying to emulate it, but can you just give me like a quick brief overview of the court case that everyone's bringing against the government?
Yeah, so it's not a court case as such, it's an investigation. So like thousands and thousands of pages and documents were delivered to Hammersmith Police Station in London. So it's like the Metropolitan Police. This was basically irrefutable evidence of everything that's happened over the last 2 years, and even beyond, things that had led up to this point that prove that, like, the steps that have taken place is where we are now. Everything to do with all the different deaths, the manipulation, the coercion. There's about 14 or 15 different crimes against lots of members of public office, as well as misuse of public office, manslaughter, blackmail, coercion, and then obviously you've got everything against, like, just everything against the Nuremberg Code, Declaration of Human Rights, like everything. So that is ongoing. There's loads of things coming out, especially like even certain channels of the Met Police have said that the case is closed and all this kind of stuff. But wow. Like that's pretty much to shut people up, because, and I mean that in the nicest way, because people are just concerned, but they're getting bombarded on a daily basis by thousands of people asking for information on it, but they're not going to give information to anybody who's got nothing to do with the case at all. Yeah.
Like, if people don't have any involvement in it, they're not going to give out details.
Yeah, so like, oh yeah, case is closed and stuff like that. So then it's pretty much, what populations are like. If something kind of like dies a death, then people kind of forget about it after a week or two, don't they? And that's similar concept. So yeah, it's very much ongoing. And then obviously added to all of those things has then come in all the midazolam and remdesivir deaths on top of that. So, the whole thing that's happened, between like the main crimes plus on the general population, plus obviously the whole midazolam murders as well, it's irrefutable. It's all there, like all the bits of evidence, the whistleblower statements. Even on Saturday we had Worldwide Freedom Rally, 300 odd statements from NHS staff were hand delivered to Hammersmith, condemning reporting of blackmail, coercion against their job, like all this kind of stuff. Again, it's all irrefutable evidence. So I know I've been helping a few people in Australia for quite some time as well, and kind of like helping them mirror what's been going on here, and methodologies and strategies based off what's going on the ground there, sort of like what their battle pitch is like in essence. And then they're then obviously getting the right sort of people in, and they've made some really good grounds where they've now got a crime number in New South Wales against the police and authorities, which has been accepted and has actually been investigated. So that happened over the weekend just gone. So it's places are making good ground. and I genuinely hope that obviously Australia, New Zealand's, follow suit very soon. And that was going to actually be my next question. Like, so, where are legal teams, if any, with anything to do with, without giving away too much, obviously if you've got some particular bits of information on where you find yourself at the minute, is there any sort of like light at the end of the tunnel from a legal perspective?
It's hard. There is one which could be really, really interesting, but I can literally not say anything about that particular one. But that could be really, really interesting. So the minute that I can say more, I will, say more, because I think you'll find that one incredibly fascinating. But the other ones that we have going on tomorrow, I actually fly to go and cover the children's court case where people are trying to stop the rollout for 5 to 11s and just saying that they don't have enough data, and that the initial study that we're basing it off has corrupt data, which is the data that came originally from the manufacturer. So that's one that's going to be really interesting. Other court cases like the no job, no jab one that I went up and covered, really, really difficult, because they did like a closed court, and then they said that anyone that watched it on Zoom wasn't allowed to record it. And I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong when it's a massive case that's going to affect all the public of New Zealand, and we're not allowed to record it, and people aren't allowed to see what actually happened. So I can talk about it, but we're not allowed to show people. And if people had seen it, I think it would have highlighted corruption. Like when you look at the data that was presented on both sides, they didn't have the data to make that mandate. They just didn't. The defense did not have that data, and it was just a shambles. And the stories that they tried to enact it to was similar to a girl who wanted to wear a headscarf at a private school, and this is what the defense for the government was. This was their whole objective and their narrative. And then we're sitting there being like, you're telling doctors and nurses that they're going to lose their jobs, and firefighters, and, how can you do that? And yet this is your defense. And so this was the really hard part, is that if people had actually seen it, they would have been shocked, because I was just sitting there being like, what just happened? But again, it's just like you're saying, the Bill of Rights doesn't matter anymore. But Helen Clark, back when she was Prime Minister, put through an amendment to our Bill of Rights. And so it went from sitting above Parliament and above government to sitting below. And so that's how they've kind of managed to get around all of this, is because legally they can, but it's because they planned it so long ago that they even proved it.
Yeah, and all these plans have been appropriate to where each country sits at the time. But I think, anyone with an ounce of, brain can see that the judiciary systems and the corruption in every single one of these countries that's been involved in this since day one, the level of corruption should be enough to alarm people that there's something not right. Because it's the same as any product, right? Even from, I've been helping and coaching businesses for a long time. It's like, if you've got a product that you want to sell to people, you tell them a story, you get people to buy into what it's all about, and that it solves a problem, right? So if there was a genuine pandemic and they had the solution for it that was good for you, you would not need the marketing budgets that each government have. You would not need all these different PR people coaching you. You would not need, all these coercing children with KFC to get onto a bus. People would be literally queuing up for it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of the questions that people don't ask themselves and never have done. It's just and again, it's the classic question everything slogan, which people just haven't been doing since day one. Because I think and I've witnessed it in Australia, and I've seen it in America, Canada, all these countries where majority of population spend their time like this. Oh yeah, comment, work off external validation. It's got us into a position where everything's made so easy for us that you don't shed any responsibility really onto anything. You do as a parent to your kids, whatever, but even that's questionable sometimes. But it's the fact that so much responsibility is taken off us now, isn't it, through apps and just everything being made so easy. So people just go, well, if I get a reaction, it's my doctor's fault.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of mentality, is that, again, that all that behavioral science has got such a huge part to play in all this, and no matter where you live. And yeah, you're totally right. It's really damning the way it's been planned for so long and got people into this point, and so they're squeezed. And it's what we're seeing in your country and in Australia is literally 1942 Germany, literally. show me your passes, and then creating two-tier societies. It's almost like they're mimicking what the Nazi Germany did,
But you're not even allowed to say that. Like you're not even allowed to say that, because then everyone's like, oh, well, my father was a survivor of this, and that's just so offensive. And I'm going, if he was a survivor, he would tell you.
Yeah.
Actually, this is what they tried to do, and it's so dangerous.
Yeah, there's loads of Holocaust victims that have been coming out and saying this is like echoing what they went through, like before. I'm reading a really good book, and there's a gentleman who was German Jewish and lives in Australia now, and what we're seeing now is just echoing what he went through, and it's crazy, absolutely crazy. What's your general feeling of how things might go over the next 3 months? I think everyone in different countries, obviously, they're in the bubble of where they find themselves with what's going on. I've been quite fortunate to interview people from all major countries and stuff, so I've got a very good idea what's happening. And I've always said it's so important for the UK population, and obviously global populations who watch the show, to understand what's really going on the ground around there, so it helps them paint a better picture. So I'm confident things are going to be better here quite soon. But I mean, the places like yours where it's just ramped up the draconian measures, and just making life so dystopian. How do you see things going over the next few months? Because if they suddenly just pulled everything, it just goes to show you how bullshit it is. And I'd be extremely upset if I was coerced and forced and went down that route.
Oh, I don't think that they'll pull anything. I think she's just sticking to that really hard line. So if anything, I think they'll put us into another lockdown, then go for the little kiddies and say they can't go back to school unless they're, jibby jab. So I think that that's what they'll try and do. And I think they'll just start to restrict the life even more of people that haven't taken it yet. Like, I think they might try and take going into retail shops off them and everything like that too. So I think they'll squeeze tighter, because people here aren't standing up. No one, people do not want to stand up. People aren't even going to the they've pulled back a lot from going to protests. I mean, you can only lead an animal so far before, if it doesn't drink, you're just going to hold its head in the water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's exactly that. But I can guarantee you, when the time comes, and people do work out, and people will in their own times, the penny will drop differently for everybody. It's going to be an unfortunate traumatic event, I think, in countries like yours, where such a vast population follow the narrative, for them to actually realize something's not right. And there's a sad place to be in. And we always knew here it would be when they target the kids, would be when we'd see a massive rise, and that's exactly what's happened. So, we've got hundreds of thousands turning out on protests. I was there Saturday, and even the amount of guys that are now there, compared to the start, I think it's because the football's, the Euros isn't on like it was in back in June, because all the guys are at that, because most of the games are here in England. But yeah, it's good to see just such a large body of people now. And then you guarantee that everybody there knows 5 to 10 people that wanted to be there but couldn't make it, just to that one,
Yeah.
But
see, all I can do is hope that, just like what you said's been happening in the UK, where all your healthcare workers are coming forward, I can only pray that the same thing starts to happen here, where people from ACC come forward and from the hospitals come forward, because it's been so limited. And I think that everyone is scared because they don't want to risk everything. But at the same time, at least you can say that you've prevented any more people getting hurt. And for everyone that doesn't come forward, you're just participating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And at the weekends in London, seeing all these NHS staff throwing their uniforms at the fence at 10 Downing Street, was such a powerful message, because obviously they've been mandated to get the jab, and they're looking at losing 100,000 staff.
Wow.
Yeah, and the fact that they're now coming out with all the real data has come out. So they say on the BBC that 150,000 people have died in 2 years from COVID-related illnesses, but it's nothing like that at all. So the real stats are around about 6,000 and something that have just come out.
Oh, I thought it was 17,000.
Yeah, some other stuff's come out, and it's actually 6,000 and something. And then you're like, well, how many of those people died in care homes from midazolam? You know what I mean? It's just like, because I've spoken to porters that were having to move bodies around, and they were just literally slapped with COVID on them, and they were just like, well, where's there no doctor like seeing what the person died of anywhere? We're just told to put COVID on it. So yeah, again, this has been a pandemic of involuntary euthanasia. It's not been a pandemic of a vicious viral disease that's been swarming the lands and killing everybody. But again, this is all coming out now, and people will have that moment. They'll have that moment when they go, oh wow, yeah, this is pretty bad, and we've been screwed over here big time. But I think that all we can do is just be there for those people. And I've said it all along, my arm's constantly like this, there for those people. And that's the best we can do, because everyone's made the best decision on, from the environment they find themselves in, that they feel is the best thing at the time for them and their family, right? And you've got to respect that. It's a case of then, how can you then work with these people and show these people that, in fact, unjabbed people aren't the devil. In fact, they're extremely healthy because they can't give you what they don't have. Again, that's been scientifically proven, isn't it, many times? So yeah, I think, for where you guys are there and here, I think the message is still similar, just the different size and populations, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only benefit here is that at least when things do go wrong, it's quite easy to get through a large amount of the population because we are so small. Whereas when it's a much bigger country, it's so much harder to cut through that noise. So I think we've got a real opportunity. I just think that it's a shame that a lot of people have had to be hurt to get to this point as well.
Yeah, and people miss that, don't they? Just how many people have actually been hurt. But like, we've got a serious pandemic of mental health issues here because of, the after effects. But not only that, like, you've got the millions of people are now on a waiting list for like cancer treatments and all the rest of it like that. And the mental health problems that come along with that. And, and for the family members as well, you know what I mean? And, the people that have died very prematurely, you've then got their family members that are trying, dealing with that. And it's just a horrendous knock-on effect. I think here it's going to take decades here in the UK to fix that.
Yeah,
I generally do. What's the score with the sports situation in New Zealand? Because obviously rugby is is like a religion, like football is here. What's the score over there? Are they still playing like normal games, or is it quite restricted? Can they play any certain places?
No, it's really, really restricted. So they're only allowed to have a certain amount of people inside the building. But I haven't seen anything about any rugby games in forever. And to be honest, I'm probably the worst person to ask because, like I said, I don't watch TV. And so if I don't follow the actual team, I wouldn't even know, because I just genuinely do not care because we've got so many big things that we're fighting. Like, ask me any question about the children, I've got you. But when it comes to like big sporting events, I'm just like, honestly, it's the last thing on my mind right now. Like, I feel like every single day is full of people that need my help because they're injured, and different groups that need to get their message out, and people that are losing their jobs, that my brain just doesn't have time for any bullshit on the side. And I know that sounds bad, but it's true. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I totally get it, because sport is a nicety at the end of the day, isn't it? It's a kind of a luxury that we have in our countries. And, I know here it's helped a lot of people get through things like lockdowns and stuff like that. Even when teams are playing behind closed doors and stuff like that, it did help people get through. But you only have to look at.
So we had the local jiu-jitsu team. They weren't allowed to train at their gym, the ones that didn't want the jibby jab. And so we turned our garage into a jiu-jitsu club, like, so that they could come and train. It was within the numbers that we were allowed to have, but it was a mental health thing. Like, these guys were in tears. These like big, strong, powerful guys who were so broken because this is like their lifeline, like this is something that they have that they are dedicated to, that they're so good at. So it's like, it's not that I don't appreciate sport. I absolutely appreciate sport, but it's just in terms of like thousands of people at an event, like I wouldn't know. But I do know that in terms of the festivals, what the government did here was they told the festival organisers that they were going to pay them out basically and be like their back insurance, regardless of if they had the festival or not. So then you had all this massive marketing campaign went on saying like 2 jabs for summer, and everyone at festivals partying and having fun. So heaps of young people went and got it, thinking that they could go to the festivals, and then it would literally be like the day before or a week before the festival and they'd cancel it.
No.
Yeah, because they could. They were like, why would I bother? Like, I've made all this money. I'm stoked. And the beauty of that, and then the sad part is that then you've got all the contractors to that festival that now get no money.
Wow.
Like, they plan all year for this, they've now got nothing. What do they do? And the people at the top are like rubbing their hands, being stoked. Worked well for me.
If that isn't authoritarian, I don't know what is. It's just like, it's ridiculous to think, well, it's not a democracy. Like, no, it's far from it. Absolutely far from it. So I'm really,
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so I'm really glad you come on the show today, Chantelle, to share all this with us, just to show everyone, especially my UK audience and Canadian and the US and Europe and that, just how mental it is in New Zealand. I feel like we need to go on a big boat trip to a secret location over there and start shaking heads.
Honestly,
I'll bring an army.
I'm like, woo, let's go, boys. Yeah, it's cool. Actually, I know we're about to wind up, but I've just recently started connecting with a lot of like ex-military people here. Brilliant. Who are really amazing at collecting intel and that kind of thing, because we are at an information war right now. Yes. So we're kind of at a pivotal point, and it's really cool getting people that understand that and that understand structure and discipline. Like, it's been awesome working with some of those guys too. Have you
got a place where people can reach out to? Like, where's best to find you or reach out?
To be honest, I'd probably only rather people that already know you, just in terms of trying to keep the circle tight, because I'm just really cautious about, you know, when you try and let too many people in, it's really easy to let a dog in the hen house. But if people want to find me, I've got Instagram, Chantelle Baker NZ, and then I've got my Facebook page, just Chantelle Baker as well.
Awesome, because I know there's quite a few British vets that live over there that would be really keen to get in touch to offer their services. So if you are watching, guys and girls, please reach out to Chantelle. Those who are stationed over in New Zealand, I'm sure you can put your expertise to very good use. Yeah, Chantelle, thanks so much for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm as dark as some of these things are that happen in New Zealand, it's really important to highlight just what's happening there. It really is, for people to really understand just how sinister some of this is. You know, I know some people in New Zealand sort of feel like they're just living a fairly normal life, and but they because they've gone along with the narrative, things seem like that, but the goalpost is just going to move to the right, to the right, to the right. The more people that sign up to this madness, it's just going to get worse and worse, because it's just literally a Trojan horse to a dictatorship, a communism. And social credit systems and all the rest of it. It's a dark place that you can end up going down, and we do not want New Zealand being in the darkness, that's for sure. Guys and girls, if you've enjoyed the show, please share it with at least one person. That's all I ask. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe to my Rumble channel, where you'll find all of the previous episodes. You won't find any on YouTube because they took me down again. So please find me on there, and on my Telegram channel, AJ Show. Chantelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. See you. Have a great day.
Awesome, guys. Guys and girls, take care, and I will see you again very, very shortly on the AJ Roberts Show.